I remember thinking that it was very strange that humans, who are an animal species among others, could be capable of changing the Earth's climate. Because if we were, and if it was really happening, we wouldn't be talking about anything else. As soon as you turn on the TV, everything would be about that. Headlines, radio, newspapers. You would never read or hear about anything else, as if there was a world war going on. So when I was 11, I became ill. I fell into depression. I stopped talking, and I stopped eating. In 2 months, I lost about 10 kilos of weight. Later on, I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, OCD, and selective mutism. That basically means I only speak when I think it's necessary. Now was one of those moments.
The climate crisis is the greatest and most complex challenge that Homo sapiens have ever faced. The main solution, however, is so simple that even a small child can understand it. We have to stop the emissions of greenhouse gases.
We are in the midst of the 6th mass extinction, and the extinction rate is up to 10,000 times faster than what is considered normal, with up to 200 species becoming extinct every single day. Erosion of fertile topsoil, deforestation of our great forests, toxic air pollution, loss of insects and wildlife, the acidification of our oceans. These are all disastrous trends being accelerated by a way of life that we, here in our financially fortunate part of the world, see as our right to simply carry on.
You would think the media and every one of our leaders would be talking about nothing else, but they never even mention it. Furthermore, does no one ever speak about the aspect of equity, clearly stated in the Paris Agreement, which is absolutely necessary to make it work on a global scale. That means that rich countries, like mine, need to get down to 0 emissions within 6 to 12 years with today's emission speed. Because how can we expect countries like India, Colombia or Nigeria to care about the climate crisis if we, who already have everything, don't care even a second about our actual commitments to the Paris Agreement?
I think that one way to make people realize the situation we are in and to realize the fact is that the media actually writes about it, treat it as a crisis. If one soccer game can gain more media than the climate crisis, then people will see that and say, oh, so soccer is more important than the climate crisis, so that means it's not that important. People don't know that we are in this emergent situation. We all say we know and we all think we all know, but we don't. I have met politicians and journalists that doesn't have a clue. They don't know the basic facts. They don't know what the Keeling curve is. They don't know what the albedo effect is. Our house is falling apart. Our leaders need to start acting accordingly. If our house was falling apart, you wouldn't fly around the world in business class chatting about how the market will solve everything with clever small solutions to specific isolated problems. You wouldn't talk about buying and building your way out of a crisis that has been created by buying and building things. If our house was falling apart, you wouldn't hold 3 emergency Brexit summits and no emergency summit regarding the breakdown of the climate. You wouldn't be arguing about phasing out coal in 15 or 11 years. If our house was falling apart, you wouldn't be celebrating that one single nation like Ireland may soon divest from fossil fuels. You wouldn't celebrate that Norway has decided to stop drilling for oil outside the scenic resort of Lofoten Islands, but will continue to drill for oil everywhere else for decades. It's 30 years too late for that kinds of celebrations. We've had 30 years of pep talking and selling positive ideas. And I'm sorry, but it doesn't work. Because if it would have, the emissions would have gone down by now. They haven't.
Adults keep saying, we owe it to the young people to give them hope. But I don't want your hope. I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. And then I want you to act. I want you to act as if you would in a crisis. I want you to act as if the house was on fire. Because it is.
And yes, we do need hope. Of course we do. But the one thing we need more than hope is action. Once we start to act, hope is everywhere. So instead of looking for hope, look for action. Then, and only then, hope will come.
I come from Sweden, and back there it's almost the same problem as here, as everywhere, that nothing is being done to stop the climate and ecological crisis, despite all the beautiful words and promises.
Once again, they sweep their mess under the carpet for our generation to clean up and solve. Saying everything will be all right while continue doing nothing at all is just not hopeful to us. In fact, it's the opposite of hope. And yet, this is exactly what you keep doing. You can't just sit around waiting for hope to come. Then you're acting like spoiled, irresponsible children.
For way too long, the politicians and the people in power have gotten away with not doing anything to fight the climate crisis. But we will make sure that they will not get away with it any longer. And we are striking because we have done our homework and they have not. Did you hear me? Yes. Is my English okay? Yes. Because I'm beginning to wonder.
You say you love your children above all else, and yet you're stealing their future in front of their very eyes.
You first came to our attention, at least, when you began to skip many, many days of school. I think it was 3 weeks in all, and you went and protested outside of Sweden's parliament. What made you think of doing that?
I got the idea from, there were a few youths in the USA that refused to go to school because of the school shootings. And then someone I knew said, what if children did that, but for the climate? And then I thought that was a very good idea. And then I decided I was going to do that, because no one is doing anything and nothing is happening. So then I guess I have to do something.
Some people say that I should be in school instead. Some people say that I should study to become a climate scientist so that I can solve the climate crisis. But the climate crisis has already been solved. We already have all the facts and solutions. All we have to do is to wake up and change. And why should I be studying for a future that soon will be no more, when no one is doing anything whatsoever to save that future? And what is the point of learning facts within the school system, when the most important facts given by the finest science of that same school system clearly means nothing to our politicians and our society?
And if you think that we should be in school instead, then we suggest that you take our place in the streets, striking from your work. Or better yet, join us so we can speed up the process. And if you still say that we are wasting valuable lesson time, then let me remind you that our political leaders have wasted decades through denial and inaction. But I assure you, we will go back to school the moment you start listening to the science and give us a future. Is that really too much to ask?
Today we use 100 million barrels of oil every single day. There are no politics to change that. There are no rules to keep that oil in the ground. So we can no longer save the world by playing by the rules, because the rules have to be changed. And since our leaders are behaving like children, we will have to take the responsibility they should have taken long ago.
When I tell politicians to act now, the most common answer is that they can't do anything drastic because that will be too unpopular among the voters. And they are right, of course, since most people are not even aware of why those changes are required. That is why I keep telling you to unite behind the science, make the best available science at the heart of politics and democracy. Why waste precious time arguing about what and who needs to change first? Everyone and everything has to change, but the bigger your platform, the bigger your responsibility. The bigger your carbon footprint, the bigger your moral duty. And many of us who will be affected the most by this crisis, people like me, are not allowed to vote. Nor are we in a position to shape the decisions of business, politics, engineering, media, education or science. Because the time it takes for us to educate ourselves to do that simply does no longer exist. And that is why millions of children are taking it to the streets, school striking for the climate to create attention for the climate crisis. You need to listen to us, we who cannot vote. You need to vote for us, for your children and grandchildren. You cannot ignore the scientists or the millions of school striking children who are school striking for the right to a future. I beg you, please do not fail on this. If a few children can get headlines all over the world just by not going to school for a few weeks, imagine what we could all do together if we wanted to.
She was very concerned and upset about the climate. She has been going on about this before, obviously, but it sort of stuck to her and she could not get this out of her head. The fact that everyone was saying one thing and doing the exact opposite all the time.
Even most climate scientists or green politicians keep on flying around the world, eating meat and dairy.
She made us realize that we were these parents, you know, standing up for human rights and refugees and right and wrong and all these things. And we were really fighting for that. And then she said, you know, whose human rights are you standing up for?
In Greta's eyes, of course, we were missing out one big point, in fact, the most important point, which was the climate or the sustainability crisis going on around us. So while we were saying all these things about, you know, taking care about our fellow man, we were flying around, eating meat and buying things and driving a big car, having 2 homes. And of course, that's not really sustainable. And then we realized that we were, of course, a huge part of the problem. In fact, we were the problem.
One thing that I found very scary is tipping points. That once we reach tipping points, then there's no going back. Then we start a chain reaction beyond our control, and that is very scary. And so that I thought instead of worrying about how a future might turn out, you should try to change it while you still can. So that's what I wanted to do.
And you're not just talking about it, but as we say in the United States, you're also walking the walk. You have changed your life and your lifestyle to try to have as low an impact as you can, both in terms of climate and sustainability. Outline some of those measures.
Yeah, I have stopped flying, I have stopped eating meat and dairy, and I have stopped consuming new things and buying new things.
So we're coming up on Christmas and New Year. You're not going to get any new things as gifts?
No, not me. My parents, they don't get me many presents because I don't want any presents.
Also, a very central thing is that we say we need, you know, a system change, so we should not be doing this as a private consumer. But there is no politics. There are no politics to solve the situation we're in today. There's not one single political party that I know of that will solve this crisis, and you know, so we need to create a whole new thing, and that's why we also need to lead by example. We may not like it, but in today's social climate, you need to live as you speak, live as you
Practice as you preach. Practice as you preach.
You say nothing in life is black or white, but that is a lie, a very dangerous lie. Either we prevent a 1.5 degree of warming or we don't. Either we avoid setting off that irreversible chain reaction beyond human control or we don't. Either we choose to go on as a civilization or we don't. That is as black or white as it gets.
Yo, how when me eat them, I wonder when me eat. When me tell them say me nah eat no fish, nah no meat now. How when me eat them, I wonder when me yam. When me tell them say that I'm a vegan man. How when me eat them, I wonder when me eat. When me tell them say me nah eat no fish, nah no meat now.